On August 6th, 1945, an atomic bomb was dropped on the city of Hiroshima, Japan. 3 days later, on August 9th, another larger bomb was dropped on the city of Nagasaki. It has now been 80 years since that happened. And I had thought about this book, Hiroshima, by John Hersey, and every once in a while I reread this, and I thought, well, it's the 80-year anniversary of this event, so I'll reread this book. And it kind of struck me, it's been 80 years. The people who lived through these events and the people who were connected to that time have pretty much all passed away, with a few exceptions. And, you know, the first-hand accounts, the first-hand memories are pretty much gone now.
Yes.
And so today I wanted to make a video about the book Hiroshima by John Hersey and talk about this a little bit. But also I wanted to talk in a larger sense about memory and about how do we, the younger generation, carry on these kinds of memory or these events that, you know, happened so long ago, and what do we do in 2025 with this information? So this video is not meant to be political. I hope that you can watch this with an open mind, regardless of your views on military or the atomic bombings of Japan, whether you think that the bombs were justified in order to end the war, or whether you think it was an atrocity that should have never have happened. Regardless of any of those things, we're not talking about the political aspect or that kind of controversial topics. What this is about these events happened, and I think as human beings, we can agree that we don't want this to ever happen again. I think everybody can kind of agree. Nobody wants to ever see a world where nuclear weapons are used. So that's our little caveat there. And so I hope that you'll keep an open mind and join us for this discussion, this very special episode of Talking Tsundoku Blues, talking about Hiroshima and the end of memory. I'm Chris.
Jasmine.
Yoroshiku onegaishimasu. So you and I actually went to the Hiroshima Peace Memorial, the Memorial Museum, a long time ago, like 15 years ago or so.
Yep.
And the guide there was a Hibakusha. Can you talk about what is a Hibakusha?
Hibakusha is a special term for basically the victims, but like specifically the Hiroshima or Nagasaki victims who experienced the bomb.
Right, people who were directly involved in the bombing. Yes. So our guide was a Hibakusha.
Yeah.
But what was unique about it was he was in utero at the time.
Yeah.
He was not even born yet.
Yeah.
And he was already like 65 or in his mid 60s.
Yeah.
Which would make him 80 or almost 80 years old now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah.
So when I talk about the memory, you know, the firsthand experience of this, you know, kind of disappearing. I mean, this guy who was in utero is now 80 years old. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, we call those people Kataribe. They're the speakers, the storytellers of the war. We have this problem that they're becoming less and less, and because they're becoming old.
So these people would go around to like elementary schools or junior high schools, and I mean, obviously in Hiroshima itself, they're, you know, talking about, like, we saw the Genbaku Dome, which is one of the structures that remained, that they kept it, you know, as it was after the bombing, so to, like, remember. And he was talking about some of that stuff. And so did you meet some of those people when you were in school? Did you have them come to your school?
I don't think not that I can remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we went to Nagasaki for the school trip.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, we experienced those things. So, yeah.
You went to the Peace Memorial there and so on. Yeah. Okay. So I want to ask you, as a Japanese, first of all, I should say that your two grandfathers
Uh-huh.
and my two grandfathers fought in World War II,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So one of my
Yes.
grandpas was in Germany,
Yeah.
and one was in the Pacific,
Yeah.
fighting the Japanese.
Yeah.
And both of your grandfathers were also fighting in the war, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, as a younger generation, I mean, we are connected somewhat
Yeah.
to this still because of our, our grandfather. But of course, our grandfathers are dead now, passed away. But how do you feel about this event? And does it seem like something that's close to you, or does it seem like something that's kind of distant and like not so, not something you really think about, or not something you really like engage with on a regular basis, like? Being Japanese, and this, every year they have these ceremonies,
Yeah.
and Hiroshima and Nagasaki have, the cities have these big ceremonies to mark the day and remember.
Yeah.
But like our generation, how do you feel about it? Do you really like think about it?
Yeah, I guess personally I do, and I did, because for some reason I always kind of felt close to war chapter of the history class. For some reason I was really interested in it, and not so long ago these kind of things happened, and
Right.
like Japan developed so quickly. So just 2 generations ago, like they were starving to death, and
Right.
like these bombs are coming on us at any given time, and
Yeah.
so I was really interested. And also we had this homework of interviewing grandparents, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, I had to talk about what the lifestyle was like with my grandma and grandpa. So and then they told me like what kind of food they had to eat, and this.
Or lack of food that they had
Yeah,
at the time.
they didn't have anything,
Right,
literally
right.
anything. And then also I went to the States, and then like the people's perspective on war is very, very different, and I was very much culture shocked.
Yeah.
Because we are very much taught that war is horrible, and then not necessarily American people share the same view. And also America was after all, America won the war and we lost the war, so like how we look at the things are just very different.
Sure,
So
sure.
I guess I was always conscious about this subject. And then my identity as a Japanese in the States, it required more attention from me, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you're more actively like thinking about it because
Yeah.
it's something that's so different than what you would experience in Japan.
Yeah, like American culture really made me think of what is Japan and what is Hiroshima and this
Sure.
kind of thing. So I used to read a lot of books on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So
I see.
yeah, I was quite aware, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I am speaking for all the generation of people of mine.
No, I'm just asking about your personal
Yeah.
experience. That's all. Again, this is not a political video. This is just personal. This is
Yeah.
personal. I'm interested in this because my grandfather who fought in the Pacific War never talked about the war.
Yeah.
He really didn't want to talk about it. I sometimes would ask him, and he would just kind of say these vague things like, "Oh, I was in a plane, I flew
Yeah,
here
yeah.
and did." But my grandfather, who was in Germany, he actually talked about the war quite a lot, and so I never really got the Pacific theater side. I didn't know much about it, and in history class, it seemed kind of dry. I didn't engage with it much, other than knowing consciously that my grandfathers were a part of the war.
Yeah.
It didn't really mean much to me until I came to Japan.
I mean, there are a lot of people who experience, who Hibakusha, who experienced Hiroshima, and then they just never ever speak about it.
Right.
Yeah, if it's like too traumatic for them, and even though it's encouraged to tell the story, to pass on to the new generations, but
Yeah.
some people, can't.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a trauma,
Yeah.
This book is considered a trauma narrative because it follows 6 people who were all directly involved
Yeah.
in the immediately before and the aftermath of
Yeah.
the bombings. One thing I want to talk about this book is talking about like history class, for example. I really like this book in the sense that it is so I don't want to say it's easy to read because it's very like emotionally difficult to read. It's very traumatic to read, but at the same time, prose wise, the language wise, it's very, very simple and very easy to read in terms of anyone can understand this. Basically, it's not dense. It's very light, but I like this book because it deals with 6 people, 5 Japanese and 1 German, who all were just regular people. None of them were military, and they all were going about their daily lives on the morning of August 6th at 8:15 in the morning. The bomb was dropped, and what happened to them afterwards. And some of them survived very miraculously.
Yeah.
Very unexpectedly, just taking the earlier train than usual, or happening to go behind a stone instead of jumping into a house that was destroyed, or something like that, in a rock garden. Like, it saved their lives. And the thing about this is that John Hersey doesn't interview them. He basically collected these accounts almost immediately after when the foreigners were first allowed, in. He came into Japan. He interviewed these people, and he created kind of a narrative. It uses literary techniques to tell the story, moving between all 6 perspectives. Hersey himself doesn't even come into the story. It's just about their lives, their daily routines, and what happened to them afterwards. He barely mentions the military. He doesn't talk about how the bomb was developed. He doesn't talk about what the American soldiers were doing or anything like that. At the very, very end of the book, there's a little bit of like GHQ and some of the scientists that came in to study the radiation levels, and some of that, a little bit comes in. But for the most part, it's just these human stories. It's this simple, direct narrative of what happened to these people, and it's edited in a way that is very emotionally affecting, because it has little almost like narrative arcs in a way, but it's a true account. It's all based on reality. There's nothing fictional about it. It's just it's done in a narrative way. The other day I was reading this book, and I was talking about how it kind of affected me more than the last few times I read it. I think the last time I read it was on the 70th anniversary of the bombings 10 years ago. And you started talking about Haruki Murakami.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that and like that strange serendipity connection that we had?
Yeah. Well, I was actually, these days I was kind of thinking like, what's the, most effective way to like write or tell something without saying this is, war is bad, bomb is bad, this is good, this is bad. Like,
right.
Even though we want to all make an argument of, our opinion, like this is what it is, this you should think this too. But then like I was kind of finding that a lot, like some people talk more in a narrative way, kind of like this book, like this is what it is, this is what happened, and then like so it depends. It's just up to the readers how they take it. But I think it's actually the most effective way of telling a story. And then I run into the Murakami Haruki's article about how it was his essay, and he was looking back and talking about the Wind Up Bird Chronicle, Chronicle.
Yeah.
And he has this whole like chapters and chapters of that Mongolian
when the Japanese invaded China and
that
occupied Mongolia.
Very strange experience around it when as he wrote, and then afterwards, like when he visited the actual place, and then he visited after he wrote that, which is kind of weird, but actually it's really kind of funny because he didn't visit beforehand, and he in the full imagination he wrote the whole thing, which is kind of, that makes him genius. But he was talking about that kind of story has its power already. So, we like writers we as a storyteller, we just tell the story from our perspective only, and then that's naturally will have the, power,
the power of the narrator, the personal connection.
Yeah, so that made me sure, and then connected with what I have been thinking about, I really think so too. And then it's for the sake of the story itself, we tell the story, and we don't even have to put any opinions or spin or the manipulative anything to it,
right?
And it's actually more powerful,
right? I think that it's very important to have, like you said, like the narrator telling the story, the emotional connection, and that's therefore the memory because you remember what you connect with, rather than like a news report. News is often a little bit sanitized, or it's often the spectacle. They leave things out, and they craft a kind of a false narrative. There's propaganda involved. There's fear and anger. They're kind of pushing some kind of message. But the beauty of this book is exactly what you're talking about. It's completely stark. There's no agenda behind it except to tell the stories of these 6 people and show what happened. Now you can say, oh, he's trying to show that the bomb was bad, or you can say, oh no, he's just trying to document or whatever. But I mean, you can put whatever you want on top of it, but the fact remains that he doesn't put anything in there. There's not even like the kind of sympathetic or oh, these poor people or something like that. It's really not. It's absolutely horrifying, but at the same time that's just what it was. He doesn't make it more horrifying by adding anything in.
I can also add one more person who does this, like I really like this, like how do I say that, occult writer, Bintaro, and his stance, like, I mean, it doesn't, again, you might find it ridiculous to, ghost stories or UFO stories or whatever, but then like
abduction accounts.
He's actually a very skeptical person as well. But his stance is that, okay, there are these people who experienced these weird things, and then my stance is to collect these stories and just take it as it is, because there are people who claim that they experienced this. So like he doesn't put anything onto it,
Right.
So like
he reports what they're saying.
He puts it down as a
record.
Record. And so it's like, it's also like that kind of thing too. Like so there are people who experience this and is stating these things. So why not just take it as it is?
Right. And then leave it up to the audience or the listener or the reader to decide. It preserves a kind of emotional memory. Like there's a human element, the humanity in there that's not really found in news reports, that's not found in history books.
I think that's why it differs, like, just the general American's view on war, or like this particular bomb. I think that's why you guys like the Grave of Fireflies.
The Ghibli movie.
Because that one's a really narrative too, and then like, I think people don't realize that these people were actually people, not just numbers.
Well, it's often numbers. And then the numbers are also, it's debate, that always comes in too. Like, well, the Japanese reported like this very high number, but actually we think the number was a little lower, or like, instantaneously how many people died versus like over the years. Well, can you really say these people were directly affected? And it's like, that stuff just doesn't even matter. It just takes away from the fact that this was an incredibly traumatic event. That all of these people, I mean, everyone in Japan was affected by this. Not even just the people that lived through it. And therefore the whole world, because we entered the atomic age, and it led to the Cold War, and it led, people were fearing the use of nuclear weapens, growing up in the 1950s. People's way of thinking becomes different. And, like, I had to talk with my grandma about war, and she was telling me, she had to make this like dumpling, like pretty much just a water and a flour. There's no like flavor to it, and then they used to make this soup, and that's all they got, and and then I wonder like what it was like, and and then my other grandpa went to Bilma, and then he tried to kill himself at the war zone with a bunch of people, because they had no hope. So he pulled the grenade, but it didn't go off, so that's how he survived, and thus I was born. So that kind of like a personal stories kind of grow on you. It's all about the personal story, and it's all about, I mean, you now telling that story continues the memory and continues carrying that, forward. This book is is all of those kinds of things, and also it has a lot of really strange little moments that you wouldn't think of it in terms of like for example immediately after the bombing. For example, the Jesuit priests decide to go back to where their mission was, and they want to try to recover whatever they can. And of course, everything is just leveled. It's completely, the land is just empty and burned. The roads are, the asphalt is all soft from the heat of the bomb and so on. But weirdly, their garden is still somewhat remaining. And all of the pumpkins are cooked on the vines. And below the ground, the potatoes have been cooked in the ground. And so they actually harvest all of their vegetables and they eat some of it because they're starving. Yeah. And then they bring it back to the little group of people in the park who are, half dead. Yeah. And they give them the cooked vegetables, which like were cooked by the bomb itself. Yeah. And then later in that same park, there's this crazy like whirlwind that all of a sudden happens, and it rips the trees out of the ground, and it picks up people and items and like a giant tornado, because the way that the clouds formed created this like insane storm for just a brief period of time, and then the storm's done, and it's like all of a sudden all the trees are ripped out of the park, and so there's that kind of like additional visceral element where it's not just about these people suffering and the radiation sickness, and I mean there's that in there too. But actually that's one of the things that I found about this book that made it so engaging is like the full picture of the weird, like the surrealness of that event. Yes. And the strangeness of some of the things that the people who survived miraculously or these kinds of strange little happenings in the days immediately afterwards. Yeah. It's like a world-ending, like apocalyptic trauma. I
mean, nobody knew what happened. Like they thought it was just one of those bombs that were,
Well, and they all have different theories of what it is. They said, the American planes sprinkled gasoline over the city and lit it all at the same time, or I mean, they all have different theories, and there's all these rumors going around. And then finally, someone says, "No, I think they split an atom." Somehow, and they're like, what are you talking about? That's like science fiction, that's not true. And and so it's like you said about your grandpa, it's those kinds of like moments, like pulling the grenade, or these little moments that stay with you and create the memory that those of us in the subsequent generations carry forward. The thing about books like this, or carrying memories of your grandfather or your ancestors, is that power that it has is so fundamentally human, and it's so personal. Yes. And I think it's so important to keep that narrative going, to keep the story being told. Even if your child says like, "Oh, Mom, I've heard the story a million times. Like, why do you keep telling me that?" Well, that's all the more reason, that's good. That's good that you know the story so well that you don't want to hear it anymore, because that means that it will continue, hopefully. And it won't just fade with the footnotes of some, history book or some dry, study that was done. Yeah. Yes, I believe in the power of narrative, and I think that regardless of what you think about war or what you think about the bombings in Japan, this is a time, 80 years after these things happened, that it's important to reflect on it. And it's important to think about how you really feel about it. And if you know people that are connected to it, it's a time to maybe talk with those people and keep the narrative going. So that's what I really want to say. That's why I wanted to make this video, because, of course, we live in Japan, and it's much closer to me now that I live in Japan than it was when I was in the States. But also, it's an important thing that happened in the history of civilization. Oh yeah. And I really feel strongly about keeping that, at least in my own self. Thinking about it every so often and reading this book every so often. Yeah. Even though it's painful to read, it's a painful read, but I feel like it's necessary, because it makes me think, and it makes me want to tell stories, important stories, whether they be fiction stories or nonfiction stories. So, well, I hope that wasn't too depressing of a video, and we try to keep things light and keep things fun on this channel, but sometimes it's important to talk about these things that really mean something to us, and usually I do this series, Talking Sunoco Blues, by myself, but I'm always happy when you join. Yeah. And I hope that anybody out there who's curious about this event and want to understand what happened in Hiroshima a little more clearly, I would recommend this book, Hiroshima by John Hersey. It's still in print. This is actually a first edition, published right after it appeared in the New Yorker, but you can find this anywhere. So we just want to say thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again.